Welcome to Job Seeker Nation. Thank you very much for joining us. We always have this panel of some sort here at 1 p.m. Eastern, 12 o'clock Central. We always stream to LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome. And first things first, my co-host, Jack Kelly. How are you, sir?
Hey, good. Thank you.
Good deal.
I'm
Always
excited to
here.
see Sweta today. This is awesome.
Yes, I know. And Sweta
The
is
queen of TikTok.
that's
Yeah, you got it. Seriously, I'm jumping
oh,
ahead here, but you got to have. Can you have me on because I want to get on TikTok and I don't know what to do. But you're. I see you seriously. I see you all the time on there. It's wild.
yeah, I know. She's like joining some of the others that have been on TikTok. I have a TikTok account, and I think I have a few that are up there. I'm still
Really? I
working
didn't see
on it.
yours.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have a few. I haven't done any in a long time because
Did
I've
you do
been.
a little dance or no? Or
No, I didn't do the dance thing yet. I haven't gotten to
no?
that point
Yeah,
yet.
that's where people go wrong. Everyone thinks that it's all about dancing.
I was
It's
kidding.
not.
Yeah, I know. It's not at all anymore,
It
right?
totally isn't.
It isn't
If
at
you ever,
all.
you want to see some really interesting, I think JT O'Donnell is also
Oh my
very
God.
interesting to
Yeah.
watch on
Absolutely.
TikTok and a
Yeah.
lot of fun as well. She does it somehow.
Yeah,
So,
it's
Oh my
really
uh,
God.
become
You're
it's really
right.
become a lot of Gen Zs. I mean, Gen Xs on there as well.
oh,
Hey,
there's some
hey,
of
hey.
everybody on there.
Yeah,
If anything, Jack, you could put your cats on there. There's plenty of
right.
animals.
You'd be awesome, Jack. You'd be awesome. Just shake it. Whatever you want to do. Just,
Yeah,
valuable content, just the way it is.
yeah.
It works.
Yeah, just shake it,
I'm in.
Jack. It'll work fine. well, this show we decided to do all things finding
Yeah,
remote work, and that is Sweta's one of her how should I say it, one of your specialties, and that's a big experience because you've done it for more than 10 years, remote and led remote teams.
wow.
So it's great timing that you're on because that's what a lot of people are struggling with. They're trying to find that next remote job. So we want to help them out. Welcome you guys in the chat. If you want to give us a holler, feel free to. And we'll always be glad to interrupt what we're talking about and be glad to talk about what you want to talk about. So welcome. Abdus is joining us. Muga is
Yes, my friend.
this
I'm
thing.
streaming it live on
Yeah,
my account as well. There are
yeah.
like 42 people watching on my
Oh,
Nice.
channel.
oh, that's very cool. We have an international audience, which many times we get anyway, but we figured with you especially. I think Daisy was that way, and Adrian Tom was that way. They're all from Canada and all brought their peoples with them. So feel free to ask any question. Like I said, we'll be glad to get to it as we can. But first, let's dig into some of the stuff that we're really interested in these days. I don't know if you hire internationally, Jack, but I think Swetcha has experience hire internationally, not just particularly from North America, but from all over. Isn't that right, Sweta?
Let me just go back. So
Go
10
back.
years,
Go back.
10 years leadership experience overall, more than 10 years in a corporate world. But I've had a privilege of leading a remote team where they were not work from home, but they were working in a different province. I had a
Okay.
bilingual team who spoke French and English both. I led those teams for a couple of years. And that, I've done so much, I've dropped the ball so much, lesson learned. And when I founded the teaching duo, obviously everything was like virtual. So I had to hire a freelancer, and those were work from home. And I literally practice all those things that I would do differently from the corporate world. And I think I want to put the disclaimer out there. I think leading a remote team, it's not a one size fits all. It depends on industry. It depends on the type of people that you're working with. And we're going to go about expectations from the leadership perspective. Also, how do you report to remote boss? Because I've done that in the past, and lesson learned as a direct report. So we're going to talk about it today.
Oh
That's
yeah.
great. So that's great
It-
that you have that experience because right
right.
now that puts you on the forefront because it seems everyone I'm speaking to, for like my Forbes articles, they're either remote, hybrid, or the new term I'm hearing. I don't know if you use this term, Sweta, flexibility, meaning that they're going to empower the workers to decide for themselves what they want to do. If they want to come in, they can come in. If they don't, they don't. They want to come in one day, and just they treat them like adults. So you have a leg up on this because I think a lot of companies are just starting to figure it out.
Absolutely. And I think flexibility, to be
Yeah.
honest with you, I was a micromanager in the corporate world when it came to, giving flexible hours. I think it was the nature of our business altogether. It was a contact center. We had a stakeholder, internal stakeholders as well. So flexibilities were not an option. But then if I were managing the same type of team in a corporate world, I would do so many things differently based on the nature of business right now and based on, protocol and mental health and so much, right? I've evolved as a leader, and I apply all those techniques right now when I'm working with a freelancer, which is flexibility is a great deal for them. And I've hired international people, some people from states as well. They have their kids, they have to go pick them up and stuff like that. They're like so much that I'm learning right now from teaching you as a consultancy altogether.
Wow.
Yeah, I think one of the things that people often get wrong, it is not utopia, because it could be a very frustrating experience if you've never technically worked from home. All the technical aspects that you didn't have to deal with at the office, that you can call someone to do and they'd come do it for you. You don't have that luxury of doing it at home.
Absolutely.
Do you
So have
think?
you done? Go ahead.
Do you think it's going to be different? For the last nearly 2 years, the vast majority of white collar workers were working remotely, but it's kind of we were thrust into it. Is it going to be different once we're like past the pandemic and it's maybe an endemic where it's still COVID but not as bad? Is it going to stay the same way, or do you think the way people work and the way leaders and managers watch over them, it's going to change?
Mark, do you want to go through it? And I have my own perspective on that.
No, no, no.
Well, you
I'm an
we're
inquiring mind,
right, yeah,
like
you're the expert,
suggestion.
yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah,
yeah,
You know what? So here's the thing, right? I think this pandemic actually taught us so many lessons, including myself as well. We're all human at the end of the day. And I think adapting to new things takes
Mhm.
time. I mean, 4 years before, I would never have imagined that I'd be leading a team who's working from home and I would be saying, it's okay, it's okay. You know what? Go pick your kids. It'd be like, I don't know, right? But now it's like that's cool. That's cool as long as it gets done. That's cool, right? I think I have changed as a leader, and I think I'm getting used to it. It was hard for me working 9 to 5 corporate world and leading a team who are remote. And even when someone asked me to, can I leave early? It's like, oh my God, what would the stakeholder think if I actually apply that rule to you? Then everyone's going to come to me and say, can I leave early, make up hours, right? I had to think about it because there are so many internal stakeholders I have to please. And plus, I had to monitor productivity, and it all boiled down to productivity. At the same time, now it doesn't matter. Get it done. How? I don't care. Communicate, over communicate with me. And I think we are actually moving on from that to just get it done, but keep on communicating with me. Don't just go dark on me, right? And I think over communicating is the key thing, in my opinion, right now. Having like daily team huddle, daily check-ins, but it might not work for everybody, because I was just talking to one of the leaders this morning, who's one of my clients. They do team huddle every time in IT world because they have to do it. But the other guy who is in a financial, analyst role is like, whoa, that's a micromanagement for me. I can't take it. So that's why one size does not fit all. It all depends on what your direct report wants, what kind of team dynamic you have. And, as a leader, you have to adapt to their personality and what works for them as well. And that's my opinion. It's not, okay, well, we're going to do this way, but what works for you all? Let's see.
Darn
that's a
those
lot. That's a lot.
traditional, darn those
Yeah.
traditional controlling values that we have, right? I mean, really, it is something that people are used to thinking that Big Brother's watching. So, there was a big deal a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's still a deal now that people are finding out, oh, you're monitoring me from home. Oh, you're really watching every keystroke that I make, or at least look at being able to see what time I'm actually logging on and off, or even to the point of watching the camera. I can't see your eyes anymore. Do you find, isn't that's something that you had to do at that time, or
I did.
was it that close,
Yeah.
or was it just project based? Get it done. Let's have some times to check in.
So when the team was, so what happened was I was leading the team who were not remote, and all of a sudden department got restructured, and I was placed in that new role where everything had to be restructured. So then I had a remote team in different province, and first thing was, oh my God, I've never managed a remote team. I've always seen my team in front of me. Now
Hmm.
it's bilingual, different language. I don't speak French as well, and there's no other French leader, my partner in the other city, other province. And I wish I'd gone back and reached out to the people who have led the remote team before. Hey, can you give me tips? Because as a leader, no one teaches you. You're expected
Hmm.
to manage a remote team. I still don't think that corporate world or anyone who would actually put the process documents of it, hey, these are the thing, take a look at the process documents when the new leaders are promoted, or there's a bilateral move, whatever it is. I don't think anyone sits down, your bosses or boss's boss, anyone, or learning and development team, or anyone from HR teaching you this is how you might want to go. I don't think we're being coached as a leader how to manage.
Hmm.
We just have to learn, and at least for me, I can speak myself. I just learned as I went, and as I said, there were so many lessons I've learned that when I look back right now, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. But the situation is different right now, right? So we all
Hmm.
learn. And as long as you self-reflect and don't do the same thing, I think you are at good start. But reach out to those people first before you start putting the expectations, I want this versus like, what do you want? How do you like to be managed? What works for you, right? Over communicating for some might not be working, and over communicating for someone in the team would be, oh my God, it's fantastic. I need daily coaching. I need weekly coaching. And I think my strategy was pre-scheduling those coaching every week and never canceling it, especially with a remote team. I'd be
Hmm.
on a phone call. Like if I have to coach for more than 2 minutes or something, I'm hopping on the call with you. There's no email going back and forth. I would travel every week, right, to have a team meeting. And back then there's no Zoom, nothing like that. It was all about talking on the phone and team meeting, and I would never do that. It was, have you ever had a conference call on phone and everyone's talking, there's no like raising hand? It was disaster. I would never do things like that now.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I can imagine how it is. Erica says that remote can be challenging, more distractions and fewer resources, and probably more decisions to make that you're not familiar with. In other words, we're not just talking about work, we're talking about environment as well. We're talking about tech and connection issues. We're talking about all those other concerns, which I think when nobody doesn't know what to do, they default to what they know basically. And that is, we want to see you work, we want to see your work done, and we need you to check in as often as possible. And that's not always the answer, but we default to those values because that's the only thing we know.
Absolutely. And I think, again, it goes back to training your leadership team. How do you lead the remote team and have that open culture discussion? What works for your team might not work for me, but let's give it a try and go from there. But ask for feedback, right? And I go back to, again, if you want to lead the team, it's not about you, it's about what do they want, adapt to their personality. Not everything is same for everybody. We're human, we have unique needs. And I
Hmm.
think that's where you're going to go and define. Empathy is the key, and making sure that, hey, is it all right? Like, what's going on? Like having that regular communications. Because a lot of time, my remote team actually vented out to me saying that we feel like we don't have access to information because you're in head office in Toronto. And you know what? We're the last one often to get that information, what changed and stuff like that. So what we have created in the environment was command center, which is like, okay, what if something is going on right now, that's where you go and check it and then see, if the tickets are closed, if the issue is going on, right? So there's a centralized team who are monitoring those, and my team's going to go and see it as well. Is it the issue going on? Is it just impacting me? I think those kind of
Hmm.
communication helps as well, where everyone goes and looks at it. Well, you know what? I'm probably submitted the ticket already. I don't need to. Maybe I need to talk to my manager about it. What's going on, right? So as a management, I think you need to have that centralized communication piece, so you're not constantly bombarded with your direct reports, because your job is to, like, coach 80%. I truly believe in it, and 20% is the admin task, right? And maybe make your future leader ready, who are really good at what they do, mentors, and make them ready to actually lead those meetings and stuff including from onboarding. What I've seen in onboarding is, as a leader, we just assign top performer, but top performer might not be great mentor. You got to match the energy with a new hire as well when you're going back to onboarding as well, right? It's one size does not fit all, because I could learn in 90 days, but what about those people who have a slow learning curve? We're actually comparing people. It's like one person can learn in 60 days. They're quite quick at learning, but the other person could take years, and it all depends, right? So I think as a leader, we should stop and start thinking about, hey, you know what? How are you going to learn in remote environment? Tell me what works best for you, instead of me, my process, and company's process.
That's good. Go ahead, Jack. Can't hear Jack.
He's
Can't
mute.
hear you. You unmute yourself.
There's a lot to unpack here from what you're saying, and it sounds like, based on your experiences, just kind of being thrust into it in no particular order. It's here. What I'm hearing is that, like, you have to kind of ask the people, like, what do they need? What do they want? What's important to them? What style is best? Do you need somebody kind of always asking you what's going on, or you don't want to have too many meetings because some people don't want that? So is that kind of maybe the first step, is really just to say, hey, what works best for you? How do I help you kind of achieve that goal? Is that kind of, for someone who's starting out as a manager, a good way to start out?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I mean, like, you know what? I needed feedback as a manager as well. If something's not
Right.
working with you, if you're an employee and if you feel like you're being micromanaged, bring it up, because in your mind, you're being micromanaged. Put yourself in boss's shoes as well. Like, why is she doing what she's doing? Is there
Yeah.
something you're doing? Is your result not up to par? Like, is your productivity not up to par to the other people? Because honestly, I had in corporate role people wanting to work from the different location. I said no, because the productivity was really lower than what he's supposed to do or she's supposed to do. And I said, whoa, new hires giving me this much of result, and the people who are in that role for 10 years or more than that, they're giving me half of it. And if you want to work from the different locations, I don't know how am I going to justify to my boss, right?
Mhm.
So I said no, and there's been a lot of friction as well. And I think it boiled down to the trust and productivity. And one of my new hire, one of the example was, who got into the banking world, and she was crazy doing like very high productivity, and to the point that she was not even taking right break at the right time, and she was killing it. And then when I asked, like, hey, do have you measured your standard against the tenure people folks there? What's the average per day you should be doing? And she was going like crazy. And the managers were all loving it, but manager had no idea that she was killing it to actually, pass that probations and everything. It's like, I want to be there. I want to keep this job before ever employable. Then I said, hold on, right? Find out, like, what are you measured against, right? And she wasn't, what an eye opener, because as a remote worker, you tend to work a lot trying to please the manager as well, but have that expectation clear as a manager from employee perspective. I need 10 a day. All right. Like, 20 is like exceeding expectations. 5 is meeting it. So then you feel you're not killing it, and you have chill time to relax, and that impacts your mental health as well. Like, be that standard, but like, don't overkill it as well. And I see a lot of remote workers, especially
Yeah.
new hire, going above and beyond, and it's not good for your health.
So
Yeah.
that's interesting. So it's like, you want your people to be productive, but you have to balance it, because you don't want to burn them out. Because you could have someone exactly like you described, I want to do great. I want to hold on to my job, but then maybe for 6 months it'll be awesome, but then the 7th month they're just completely burnt out and their production slips. So I guess as a manager, if you're going to manage remote teams, you got to start making sure, okay, hey, I love that your energy, I love what you're doing, but don't worry, this is a marathon, not a sprint.
And the manager has to step up and also be the advocate for the people as well, right? So they get bosses that say, hey, I noticed that these times are a little off. If they're monitoring, you've got to step up and say, hey, we've been killing it right here, but they also need time to do these things. So that feedback, there should be a conversation rather than interrogation from the manager point. But then a lot of times I can see too where the manager has to turn around to their people and have to communicate what the bottom line is from his bosses. So in that particular instance, whether before I read a couple of comments, give us a feedback on how you had to manage your managers and also manage your people and manage the disparity in the communication.
I mean, you know what? As a manager, I'm not the only one who's accountable for my team, but I'm accountable for my manager's goal as well, right? I'm
Right.
making bonus based on the corporate structure. My manager's goals are tied up with his bosses, and his goals are tied up with my goals, right? We got to be aligned all together. When the
Mhm.
productivity actually is lower than what's expected, that's when the question comes in, okay, what do we do now? What's not working, right? And I think we've done, like, as a leader in corporate role, we've done some things which worked out fantastically, like, great. But the other thing was we just drove the employee nuts, right? We
Right.
all, and then, and I think, and again, I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, I was the best manager. For someone, I was the best. For someone, they hated me. People have quit on me as well, thinking that, well, this is not my job. And those are the people who got demotivated because now the job was so comfortable, and they were like, you know what? And now this new manager comes in and, like, put the matrix and everything. I don't want to work for this, like, area at all. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
I don't think anyone wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to suck at the job today. It's just, what happens is, like,
Yeah.
what, it's not going to work for me because what I signed up for before, it's no longer there. And you know what, whatever reason, I'm going to resign. And that's where the great resignation comes in, I guess, right?
Yeah.
People leave bosses, but then at the same time, people do leave for whatever reason.
Do you think,
Mhm.
speaking of the Great Resignation, do you think that, as like Amazon recently said, basically everybody can work remotely, and like they have a gazillion people working for them, PwC, all these big companies are saying, hey, you can work remotely. And do you think more turnover where you don't have managers who went through what you went through and maybe aren't trained what to do, and then you can have people feeling miserable, and it could kind of end up backfiring a little bit where these companies go, oh my gosh, we didn't realize we're losing even more people. We thought we'd retain them because they're working remote, but now they're leaving because we really didn't train our managers to do everything you're talking about.
That's such a good point because, in last 2 months, I think 4 of my clients who are so excited to work for that company, dream
Yeah,
role, they all work from home and they quit. And the reason
really.
was micromanagement, a constant coaching that didn't work for them. And that let me reflect. I'm like, hey, I always ask them, was it you? Wrong job? Was it boss? Was it culture? And everything was mixed, right? Because, and to your point is, I don't think the leaderships are trained on how to manage a remote worker. It's all new to us, right?
Yeah.
And I think we got to self-reflect as a leader and find out what works. And also as an employee as well, your boss is not a human mind reader at all. What's not working for you, you got to strategically learn how to manage up. That's something that we're never trained. You got to, like, you can't lash out with the management. You got to make sure that you're strategically
Sure.
diplomatic and working through, let me help you to get that new next promotion, boss, but help me get that promotion at the same time. Let's move together, right? So I think a lot of corporate company branded companies as well, no matter what, I don't think there's a budget of training leadership.
I don't think so, right? Like I
Mm.
haven't, Mark, have you heard of that? Like I haven't heard of companies saying, "Oh, hey, we have a program to train managers to know what to do." And
Well,
I
that's
follow
very
this really
interesting.
closely, right?
It's very interesting you should say that because there are companies that have and what they call an onboarding or a where they're accepting back people who haven't been with the company for a while, where they help onboard them. They're watching them closely and helping them adjust to that. But I don't know to say that they're getting the same giving the same training or getting the same training as those who already had been remote and had that responsibility for a long time, or whether those who've had the responsibility for a long time, did they ever get it, or did they learn by baptism by fire, like a lot of folks end up doing, where this is it, this is the way we're going to work, and you've got to adjust to it. And I think that's where the majority kind of fit in.
Hmm.
I think there's fewer that fit in. Oh, we got this training, and they can point to X, Y, and Z. but at the same time, training doesn't mean that you got everything you need because there are unforeseen circumstances that everybody has to go through, especially when everybody had to do it back in February and March of 2020. So I think that looks different. But I do want to bring some questions in that we've had. This Sharon Honeycutt wrote a long question, but I'm just going to try to cut through her questions to get to. It says the COVID mandates. This doesn't make fully sense for a fully remote worker, and I've been caught account. This is stipulation of employment. Why and how to deal with this? And I guess what she's talking about is about the mask wearing and being able to get shots. Blah blah blah. Why do I have to get all that? And yet I'm fully remote. And probably they're not speaking to those who are fully remote, who are in their own domain and basically are those responsible for their own health, is what I'm this conjecture, by the way, that maybe it applies more to people who are going into the physical office that does to those who are fully remote. That's one thought. Was there another way that you guys can interpret that, Jack, Sweta?
Jack, I'll let you take it while I'm
Sure.
still reading.
I mean, I guess it seems to me that that Sharon is concerned. Hey, I want to go back, but it doesn't make sense for a remote worker that you have to adhere to all these restrictions. That's tough, Sharon, because like this is the big argument. You have one group of people who are very much wear your mask, get vaccinated, go for the boosters, get your kids vaccinated, and then you have obviously others who are like, I don't want to do it. And I would suggest maybe find a place, even if it's remote. Yeah, it's like sometimes I think, Sharon, what ends up happening is how companies have zero tolerance programs, and they don't even try to work out things that don't make sense. So like if you're working at your house,
She does say that it's a fully remote position.
yeah,
by the
that's
way,
what I'm saying. So like if she's remote, it doesn't really fit with the program. So like if you're remote and you're not near any clients or any customers, what difference does it make? But you get
right.
caught up in that
Right, it's your
zero
decision. I would
tolerance.
think. I would think,
Yeah,
but maybe a company is saying that you have to do it whether you're remote or
yeah,
not, which is kind of killing what the whole purpose was, is to make everybody else around you physically safe,
exactly,
not particularly
exactly.
that you're remote safe. So that's one thing. And then there's the second question is, what can one do in order to stand out in these roles? And that's where Sweta can come in. How can people stand out remotely? Or remote working, how can they work and show themselves that they're a superstar, and they perhaps might want to aspire to something greater or aspire to more work, whatever that case may be.
I mean, like, I can speak from personal experience managing the remote team. What always worked for me was, me constantly not checking on work, them
Hmm.
actually over communicating before me even asking. Something's due, give it to me, like, not a day off. You know what?
Hmm.
Just give it to me one day in advance. And you know what? If it's not working, if you need help, let me know. Don't drop the ball on me in the last minute, because I'm answerable to my boss as well, right? Make me look good as well. I'll make you good look. Like, I'll have your back if you have my back as well, right? But like, communicate with me. And I think tracking works, because what we used to have was, I mean, as a freelance, like hiring freelancer, I don't know if you guys have used the Trello. That's like, that works beautifully with the tracking as well. Pending things and to-do list and everything. Not a lot of work, but again, if those people who are really good at Excel make a spreadsheet and highlight the priority in the color red, blue, whatever you want, right? And your boss does not have to keep on checking on you every time. There's a spreadsheet for a team of people. I used to manage over 20 people, let's say. Then I'm looking at it, where are people? And if people are falling behind, I automatically know it's transparency. And I'm going to ask people, hey, this person needs help. Can someone lend a hand? And those people who are high performer, they're always good to go and say, I can do it, right? But then what are you
Hmm.
going to do about the low performer? What's going on? Like, is there something, not working with a low performer? You got to manage them as well. And I've I've had the instance where high performers, like, this person keeps on asking all the time the help and everything. What are you going to do about it? Why are you not holding that person accountable, right? So you got to manage low performer, but you don't want to burn out those high performers just because they're like, hey, I can do it all, right? So there are carrots for everybody. I don't think everyone works for money. I don't think everyone works for work-life balance. Everyone has a different motivations. That's what I truly believe in. You got to find out, how do you motivate? Is it the next promotion? Do you want to be next leader? Do you want to have more flexible hour? Do you want do you want more bonus? Do you want more project, right? So you got to find out as a leader what motivates them. And again, I always keep on saying one size does not fit all when it comes to remote team, and communicate and ask them.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jack.
Yeah. I'm curious, is there a difference between how remote work was being done, like when Mark was saying, going back to February, March 2020, and let's say now moving forward, as companies are going to start, and probably, I don't know when officially you're going to feel like, okay, this is what we're doing, and everyone has their game plan. Is it a different type of remote work, or is it just the kind of same thing? I don't know if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like we thrust into it, no choice, right? Thrown into the deep end of the pool. 18 months later, now companies like, okay, we're going to be hybrid, we're going to be flexible, we're going to be remote, or you have to be in the office. Is there going to be a difference, or it's just going to be a continuation, you think?
Okay, I can speak with a couple of my clients who work in this company. It's a banking sector. And what they've done is, I was surprised. I work for the similar kind of company where even working from home was huge security, risk, concern, compliance, and whatever it is, right? Because we have access to information. Now, what I've been hearing is these clients are told, no more coming to work at all. There's no cubicle. Everything is removed. You're working from home. Doesn't matter. Get it done. And if you need to come to work for whatever reason, once in a blue moon, you guys just call and book the desk, and we can have meeting. How cool is that? And these are people who are both on, who went on mat leave and pat leave, and they're having like lovely, the work from home life balance, no daycare expenses now, right? Husband and wife working together. And it's like, even to the end, this is where the support comes in as a management, is her boss is letting her do. It's like, it's okay. You know what? When do you want to work? That's fine. As long as you commit to 7.5 hours, just let me know you want to log in at 7 or log in at 10. It's a key work. Get it done. I don't care. But again, employee is a very high performer too. So there's a trust issue, right? I don't think anyone would have a same leverage if you're slacking off. You got to get the buy-in from the leadership and your manager as well. Before you ask, see, you know what? Am I able to do this? Am I able to commit to it? Right. So she gets the thing done. She beats everybody out there. And she's given that liberty of, that's okay. You can work Saturday morning if you want to. You don't have to log in on Friday. It's really flexible. And I was quite impressed. And we're talking about the same company structure. We're really, really bad.
Do you find, Sweta, do you find it where, people be judged a lot by being in the office? Mark and Jack, they're at their desk early in the morning and they're late at night, so they must be working really hard. And then you find with the pandemic and you work in remote that, just because they're at the desk and staring at a screen, they're not as productive as other people who maybe I didn't see them as much in front of their desk, but their output is so much great. And does that like show like who are the real rock stars of the company who aren't? You know what I mean? Like all of a sudden, it's like, wow, I thought these people who were like coming in early, staying late, working through lunch, working through dinner, but they're not so great. Their output is not, they're putting the hours, but their production is meh. Has there been a lot of that? Have you noticed that, which surprised you? Like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this was happening.
You know what? I'm guilty of that. I have that. I was working 9 to 5. I've never left, work early. I felt guilty. I worked overworked. I've traveled, I was like, you know what? I'm always working. Oh my God, I'm such a hard worker. Right? So until I had to self-reflect and see, it's not about hours of work. It's about the results, and I'm trying to give it to my manager. And then it's like, okay, slow down. Just because you're not taking break today, that does not mean that everyone's going to go and see like, oh, she works so hard, right? And I think to your point is productivity matters. Don't overkill yourself. Take your break. And that's what happens with remote worker right now, right? My husband was working remotely, and it's crazy that he's not taking like, break. And I'm like, yo, you die tomorrow, somebody's gonna replace you like in
Exactly, right?
3 seconds. Take your break, right? So don't overdo it. Like,
Did you find do you find for yourself, when you kind of came to that realization that you were more productive when you were just killing yourself by just grinding out hours for grinding out hours?
I think I work both way. I think I can, it's different now.
Yeah.
Before it was like nonstop laptop, BlackBerry. No one told me, although like, I need the response in 2 minutes, but I was one of those. Everyone would be calling me and say, why are you emailing me at 2 a.m.? Like my colleague, well, my direct reports were answering. You're not supposed to. I'm like, you know what? That's who I am. I'm so, so, so passionate about what I do that,
Right.
I would do it. No one's forcing me. But I realized after I got laid off, like, screw that.
And you're like, I did all this and you lay me off? Right. That's
Well,
that's hurts.
but I think one of the things that very often that people ask, and I think Sharon, I think is her name. I think I might pronounce it Sharon. But one of the things people want to know is how to find these remote jobs and how to go about. So, Sweta, maybe you could talk a little bit about, or can you talk a little bit about how your clients are finding remote positions and how they're actually taking the next steps after they find them and applying to them. And I'm sure it's just not cut dry always where they can just apply and automatically get a response whether they're good or not. Does that
Absolutely.
come to? Go ahead.
Yes, and you know what? I'm glad that you asked. I almost forgot about that. So recently, a couple of my clients have gotten hold of remote job. It's a recruiter reaching out from the international level, especially in a
Hmm.
business development area, because they're trying to get some business in Canada. So a couple of my clients through LinkedIn, it all happened through LinkedIn, right?
Hmm.
So they want something in Canada and they're like, okay, who to go for? So obviously your LinkedIn must be optimized and branding needs to be crystal clear before
Right.
someone reaches out. And for those of you, I think I've done the video on YouTube, teaching your YouTube channel how to find the remote work. I give you the screenshot of it. And then there's like step-by-step guide. How do you go and locate the remote work? But I'll tell you what, I can tell you that there are a bunch of remote work, but at the same time, what happens is it might not work for your industry. Some industry, it's still warranted that you go. There's a hybrid model and everything. You got to figure out, like, where you fit into the bucket. But if you want to find the remote work, still go out and see on LinkedIn, type in remote on the location. But again, there's a Boolean search way to do it. I have free resources on my website, teachingyou.com. Under free resources, there's LinkedIn. You can go and download right now. And then, you know what? It gives you the step-by-step guide of how do you search for a job in your industry, a remote job. And you can see it. And I'm sure there are like so many of jobs, and you can reach out to them and, apply for application.
Well, I have something you can maybe put on the side too, because Mark, I'm glad you brought it up. We just put together a site, Remotify, which is jobs for white collar professionals. Right now, it's the U.S., so it's you could go there and you could just search for remote
Right.
jobs really across the country. Would have it international as well. And where I've noticed that a lot of these remote job boards, they started out a long time ago. So they were more for like software engineers, kind of creative types and what have you. These are more for your typical kind of maybe banking, investment banking, that usually in the past, they really didn't work remote. So this is kind of an opportunity because I do feel this is going to be, I don't know what you think, Marcus, but I think this is going to be such a dynamic time coming up because there's going to come a point where all the companies can say, okay, here's what we're doing. And
Right.
either it's going to be remote, hybrid, or flexibility. And you're going to have millions of people here in the US and multi-millions around the world that are going to be doing this. And I think there's a big need. And this is why I was so excited to have this conversation, have Sweta here, because there's such a need. How do we make this work? Because if it's not rolled out right, it could just blow up. And then I could easily see a lot of CEOs and executives saying, you know what? Especially the older ones that like for 40 years were in offices and they didn't know anything different. See, I told you it wouldn't work. All right, everyone get back. So I think it could be huge and just a game changer
Is
for
that
everyone's lives.
Remotify? Is that
Yeah.
that's REMOTIFY dot
AFY, AFY.
Perfect. I'll add
It's
that.
AFY?
I'll add
Okay.
that in my free
yeah.
download. I'll put it in there so people can see it as well. We also have the link for job seekers, linked on our the blog. I'll add that as well, and I'll add yours too. So that's
Thanks.
beautiful because tomorrow I'm doing the employment webinar for employment agency in Canada. I will tell them as well. Yeah.
Thanks. Because it's I think it's just gonna be so interesting how this all plays out, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And I think that people are really, if people don't do the extra work behind, fine, because some positions are actually they're remote, but they're not even saying that they're remote. Because they're used to working that way. That they should dig deep and find out what the actual remote culture is like, because remote culture too is sometimes a little different than the actual in office experience. And it might be better to be in office depending upon what expectations are and things like that if people don't do the work. So you, by using LinkedIn, they can also contact the people that work at that company and ask additional questions before they start to dive in and get excited about applying to a company like that.
That's all. I want to add one more thing, okay? When it comes to productivity, and I can speak from my experience, if I've done the job, let's say I was a CSR, let's say, right?
Mhm.
I've been one of them in the past, and I know what good productivity looks like. So then I am still, it's not enough for me because team dynamic is different. Someone who are low performer, or maybe whatever reason, maybe they don't have the right tools, knowledge, whatever it is, they're struggling. As a manager, I still need to sit down and go and see what everyone is producing side by side,
Mhm.
hijacking, shadowing, and going into hourly of their day. Hey, show me what you're doing, not to judge but to really understand, and then come back with a productivity measure. Because a lot of managers, what they do is, okay, well, high performer is giving me 25 a day, and you're at 10, but not trying to understand why you're at 10 and you want 25. That's where the burnt out begins. Try
Mhm.
to
Mhm.
understand, and if you have done the job, you can relate it as well, and it's really easy to actually go back and set the right expectation. When I did it, I did this much. And when someone is doing it, they're doing this much. Clearly, some gap is there. How can I help? Right? And that's the attitude I think we need to have it, not comparing everyone into the same, level. Everyone is different. That's my thing. Just understand the role before you start asking for more.
So it's really
Yeah,
so that goes back to your case where you really
that
have to
makes
have
sense.
training for managers to do that. Because I think managers, it's easier to say, "Hey, let's mark Jack Sweater, you
Yeah.
guys are all the same and we treat all the same." But it's not. We all have different styles of working, different ways, different biorhythms. I like starting work early, maybe, you like starting work later and staying later. So yeah, so it's
Yeah, and I think it before when it first was reported that yes, in office you're going to be seen as a superstar. That's not particularly true, especially when the statistics, and I think Allison points that out, and we reported it on as Jack, that they were showing statistics saying that the remote workers, people were like 2 or 3 times as productive being at home than they were being in the office. And we're talking about work production now. That doesn't speak to all the other side conversations that happens around remote work. But I think people have to look at it as an opportunity to be the most productive at work, and that should be something that you're willing to do, not something where you're going to look to see where the culture is and act accordingly. Although Sweta is kind of indicated too that that maybe the people who tend to overproduce and overwork are seen a lot differently, and people are saying you need to scale this back because you're making us look kind of bad here.
That's exactly my point. Because my clients were told, they're like,
yeah.
slow down, you're making us look bad. And then I've always gone back to my client and said, listen, you know what? If your boss actually fails to actually give you the target, and
Mhm.
fails you to give that 30 days, I believe in this 30 days, 60 days, and 90 days plan. It's you going out there and holding them accountable and saying, hey, what should be a target? What's your expectation? What is the highest target you've seen and what's the lowest one, right? So that gives you liberty of playing around. And if there's a slow day, you understand you're not going below the minimum. And then you know what, if you want to be a high performer and going there and you want that next promotions, you know what, my thing is work hard even if no one is watching, because at the end of the day your boss would know than anyone else. And next promotion, if you want that, then you got to shine out, you got to do more than other people, right? I mean, yeah, networking helps too, but at the end of the day, bosses do not promote you to look you good, to make them look good, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and that ends up being a conversation and could be quite uncomfortable if two people are coming in two different pages. And I think one of the things that we try to do here as well, we try to get a pretty macro picture, not so much a micro. And I know some people were expecting us to talk all about finding remote, but I thought it was important too that we talk about the ins and outs of finding remote, because you have to look at not just the job description and being able to apply to a bunch of jobs, but you got to also know what to look for and what to expect and how to manage those expectations from your end. Something I want to read from Allison. She says that she's been working for remote 20 years, and she said communication is the key, being diligent and responsible, which builds trust. And she said she was told decades, like you, decades to slow down, and that was at a fully office position. But I think remote, especially, is easy to stand out if you're the new person with less responsibility and maybe a tunnel vision for what the goals are. You could be seen to stand out very quickly. But sometimes for all the reasons, because if you're new, you're just concentrating on one or two pieces of the job. If you've been there for a while, you've got all these other parts to manage, and that's where a lot of the disconnect happen. But Jack, did you have any other questions?
No, no. Oh my God, time flew by. I'm looking at the clock here.
I
This
know,
is
right?
wild. What do you
I,
get? Yeah, I do. Like, so how do you think this will play out? Moving forward, a few months, 2, 3, 4 months from now. Let's say, barring there's not another kind of variant pop up. Do you think the vast majority of people will be working remotely?
I think there are people, some of my clients, like, I can't wait to go back. And you know what?
Yeah,
Because of kids at home,
really.
we're all sharing Wi-Fi. It all depends on, like, personal need, right? And I think people are I'm loving working from home because I don't have to look like this all the time. I can work in PJ, whatever it is,
Right.
Maybe there are other people, they want to just really have that client conversation. It depends on the industry, I think, and it depends on the personal need. If I were to ask, like, I never thought myself in the corporate world that I want to work from home. Even though I had an option to work from home and log in, I never worked unless I was sick. I never did it because I was not that kind of person. But now everything changed and I'm loving it. So I think it's all based on the personal situation and needs.
Yeah. Do you think the people who go back or want to go back, and I completely understand why, that they don't want to do 5 days a week? They'll come back, but be only like 3 days or something like that.
It's I think I think we did one survey out in my team. Would you like 4 days a week or 5 days? I'm talking about a couple of years back, and everyone was like 4 days. I want 3 days
Yeah.
off. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. And you know what? I've done that as well. Like 10 hours a day, you're done. But I think it burns you out. It feels like 12 hours a day. But then at the end of the day, you have 3 weeks off, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, and I guess if you, it depends on how you manage your work overall. I mean, that's not to say that people are really good at managing their workload, because usually it's either all or is sparse, and everybody else on the team might be full on, and I can see where the discrepancy actually happens, is that people just have different workflows, and like I said, you got somebody new or somebody with less responsibility who has tunnel vision, as opposed to those who have much more macro look and macro responsibilities, that there would be that discrepancy. And I think it is better ultimately, treat adults like adults. Let them trust them to do the work, and they will show the earth. Then you can address the performance issues if you have to in the long run. So, yeah, I think that's really important. In the meantime, we are coming close to the top of the hour. Sweta, thank you so much for joining us here on Job Seeker Nation. And let Job Seeker Nation know, what do you have coming up that they should watch for, that's important to you, that they might find some value in?
Oh my God. You're asking me the interview question. What's your long-term goal? What do you I hate that.
Well,
Where do you see
we're
yourself
looking
in
for
5
one
years?
thing that you want people
So
to
tell us about
follow along
yourself.
with
What are
you.
your 5
That's
years
all it
plan?
is.
All right.
What are
So
your strengths and weaknesses?
Right.
right? Okay. So I'm working on the course TIY, which is teach it yourself. So I'm working
Yeah.
on that for our website, and hopefully it gets done. Just on a final stage of editing and stuff like that. So kind of like I'm still debating on it. What's the good way to go in there? I'd like to give. I don't know if Sarah Johnson and Virginia and Adrian Tom is watching this. I'd like to give shout out to these co-founders. Beautifully done. Job secret weapon for job seekers for DIY. If you want to download anything, and you don't want to spend so much money in coaching and you can learn yourself, please go ahead and download. And I'm so honored to be on that list as well. I have the networking templates ready to go for $5. It's worth it. Go ahead, there's a script. And shout out to everybody out there. If you want to go and do DIY, that's a job site for you right now. It's like Amazon, pretty much like
Yeah.
all coaches coming together, vetted
Yeah.
out by these 3 ladies. And then you know what? You can download whatever you want, and you don't even have to hire any one of us.
Yeah,
How cool is
yeah,
that?
that's good. No, I like the idea, and we've had all 3 of them on the show at one time a few weeks
Oh,
back. That was a pretty big show. Jack, you got anything that the
Well,
people should know
yeah,
coming
but
up?
I'll give it back to Sweta. So for yourself, I know you talked a lot about what you do, but you never really talked that much about your company. So maybe you could share for, the audience a little
well,
bit
what?
more about what you do and all the good stuff. So this way they have a good feel for what you have to offer.
Absolutely. Thank you. I this is where I just, I just let it go, assuming that everyone knows
Yeah.
Teach and Do, right? And that's what they say. You should not assume. So
Yeah.
while Teach and Do, I'm a founder and CEO at Teach and Do, and I quit my corporate world. I used to manage team. I quit my corporate world to actually give it back to the job seeker. I normally work with a niche market, which is newcomer to Canada, immigrant in Canada who are lacking that Canadian experience. Also, personally, I was laid off as well. And at 30, I felt like there was ageism. Trust me, I felt like I was too old to
Yeah.
bounce back. So I help people who are laid off and help them bounce back with the confidence, especially those people who never had to look for a job, who got the job in networking, through networking, what else. So I teach that. Everything is online, virtually done, live. And, I'd love to talk to any one of you who follow on that bucket, and then we can go, from there if we're the right fit or not. So again, teachanddo.com. If you want to talk to me and, see if we're the right fit, go to teachanddo.com appointment. I'd be more than happy to have 30 minutes discovery call and see if we can, connect.
That's
Awesome,
great.
awesome.
That's great. How about you, Mark? What's going on?
Well, let's see. Friday we got another show. It's her name is Kelly. She's going to be on with us here on the Modern Job Search Checklist. Join us is at Friday, 1 p.m., as we always are. And I know the holiday season's coming up, so we're probably going to have some more holiday content between both shows to talk about how to find a job, how to navigate this particular era, because I think it's a lot different. Usually, companies are advertising for retail jobs, and those aren't the only jobs that are being advertised right now, because there's lots of other jobs that are become available. But it's a very interesting dynamic. We're going to look to parse the difference between all of those, as well as other subjects we got coming up, and a bunch of guests we have coming up. So instead of going into it, Jack, Remotify is
Yes.
your new subplot.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'm always
so
doing something, bro. We're
I
always
know,
working on
man.
something.
You're
This
always
is
getting, and it's
remote work. I gotta tell you, like Sweater, you can appreciate this. I'm working all the time, but not because it's just I don't know. I find like I don't know what else I'm gonna do. I don't have the 3 hours of commuting anymore, going back and forth to Manhattan. So you get 3 hours, but it's more than 3 hours because then there's like an extra hour-ish that you just shot and exhausted. You know what I mean? When you come
yeah,
home. So I find I have so much time. So I'm like, all right, let me be productive.
yeah,
Good. I
yeah.
mean, like that's what happens when you're working from home. I
Right?
feel like I'm working like 10 hours a day, more than that. But when you love what you do, to be honest, it doesn't feel like you're working. And
See,
I am
that's a
doing
big
so
thing.
many hours.
Yes. See, that's
Mhm.
the key. Because if you don't like it, then it's misery. if you like what you do, then that's cool. And if you love what you do, then it's like, all right, might as well do this because I'm
Yeah,
having fun doing
that's
it.
how
Yeah.
that's how I find it. I
Yeah.
love what I do,
Yeah,
so
like you're like on LinkedIn all the time, or like all I do is I
it
turn it on
sure
and
seems
see
like
you're
it.
interviewing someone.
I'm
Yeah,
gonna
I
Yeah.
go
know, a
TikTok now. I'm
perpetual
gonna go
LinkedIn.
TikTok. Do you guys want to hop in?
You know what? I'll take you up on it. Yeah, because I'm telling you, it's I hate to admit I'm spending way too much time on TikTok checking it out. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, now you might as well use it for something now that
Yes.
you're watching it like
Yes. Yes.
everybody else. We are going to cut
So
it short here. So the rest of you, thank you
yes.
very much
Well,
for joining us at Job Seeker Nation. We'll be back next week. As always, we've got guests all the way till the end of the year, just
yeah.
about. We are not going to be here on Thanksgiving week, and we're not going to be for a few weeks during the Christmas break. But other than that, we've got guests.
Yeah.
People are coming on. People are asking about it. So it's going to be great. So thank you very
Excellent.
much for joining us.
Thank you for
Sweta, thank
coming
you
here.
very much
Thank you. It
for
was good seeing you
joining
again.
us here. Jack, thanks.
Yes.
And the rest of
Thanks,
you have a
bro.
great weekend.
Excellent.
Peace in the Valley of Love.
Thanks.